So Ohio State, Oregon, one of the best college football games. I mean, it lived up to the hype, no doubt about it. Not the result I wanted, not the result Jake wanted, not the result that a lot of Buckeye fans, or that all Buckeye fans wanted. Alabama, Georgia, one of the best games of the season, no doubt. Still think that's the number one game of the season thus far with all the drama and everything. I think Ohio State, Oregon, pretty damn close. I mean, it lived up to the hype. Big Ten was well represented in that, and honestly, probably a preview of the Big Ten championship when it's all said and done. That's most likely not the last time you're going to see Ohio State and Oregon go head-to-head. But coming into this season, Ohio State, obviously, look, it's Ohio State. More times than not, they are considered a national championship contender. But I'm getting to the point as a Buckeye fan where I'm just starting to question if it's fair to continue to prop them up as a national championship contender every single season, including this season, when they keep doing things that prove that they're not. Look, we know this team is super talented. The reason that they were propped up as high as they were is because of the fact in an offseason you retain a lot of your, if not your entire defense, you go and you get the likes of a Caleb Downs and you add to the depth there and you add to that secondary. You add a lot of depth there. And then you, on the offensive side, you go get one of the top quarterbacks in the portal. You go get the best running back in the portal and Quinshon Judkins. Already a very good running game to begin with, and now you have a two-headed monster at the run game. We can go on and on about why this Ohio State team is loaded, whether it's the $20 million that everyone tries to discredit their success with or not. The bottom line is if you're not spending money, you're probably not going to be in national championship contention very often anyways. But there's a reason that for me, despite the fact that Ohio State has spent a lot of money, despite the fact that Ohio State probably has the most talented roster in college football, super talented team, super talented roster, but are they a good team? I think they're good. I don't think they're a national championship good, though, and here's why. I've seen enough. I see Everett in the chat, and I see others that are like, oh, my gosh, one game and you're overreacting. One game and you're jumping off ship. I'm not overreacting. I'm not jumping off ship. I don't know if I believe that this team is a national championship contender, and the reason is, when the hell's the last time they beat an actual contender? You can't just prop them up as a national championship contender just because they play a lot of teams that are in national championship contention, but then ignore the result of it. Well, they played Oregon tough, so they're a national championship contender. Well, they lost. Results matter. I don't really care about the eye test because the eye test says, yes, Ohio State has the talent to compete with anyone in the country. But what about the coach? And keep in mind, this is one of those topics where I'm not necessarily calling for Ryan Day's job, but I am being very critical because I think he is a weak link that could get in the way or will get in the way of them winning a national championship. We talked last week about the Buckeyes and Ryan Day's biggest losses over the years. And you can have a list of all his losses, and then I'm going to ask you to have a list of all his biggest wins. And what are they? He didn't have any. Oh, Notre Dame back-to-back years. That Notre Dame program combined for 7 losses in that 2-year period, including a 4-loss Notre Dame team in 22 that lost to Marshall. That was one of Ohio State's biggest wins. Pick your standards at Buckeye fans. Like that's not a big win. That's an expected win. You should beat a Notre Dame team that lost 4 times. You had C.J. Stroud. You had Marvin Harrison Jr. You had weapons galore. And we beat Notre Dame. That's a 4-loss team that lost to Marshall. You beat Notre Dame last year on the road. Very tough environment, no doubt. Impressive win. Tough environment to go on the road, no doubt. That's a 3-loss Notre Dame team, though. And you're supposed to be a national championship contender. I don't get all hyped about beating 3-loss teams. I get hyped about beating national championship contending teams, and Notre Dame is not a national championship contending team. So, good win. Not an elite win, not a great win. All right, Michigan, national championship contender. Big Ten championship contender. Lost to them 3 straight times. The last time you played Oregon, playoff contender. You lost to that team. Georgia in the semifinals, very similar to Oregon over the weekend. We're right there, play for play, score for score, stop for stop. If there was a stop in that game, bottom line is you came up short. You lost. When you played Alabama, the national championship game, that's great. You got to the national championship game, but you're supposed to be on the same level as a Georgia and Alabama. The last time you've played Georgia and Alabama, you've lost. You can't beat Georgia. You can't beat Alabama. You can't beat Michigan. You've lost for 3 straight times. And apparently you can't beat Oregon, which is kind of a problem because Michigan used to be the biggest threat in the Big Ten to Ohio State, but I think now Oregon is, and you've proven you can't beat them either with Ryan Day as head coach. All those teams that lost those big games over the years, all super talented. Talent's never been the issue. This team's super talented this year. Yeah, I know. Talent's never been the issue at Ohio State. I'm not worried about the talent. Of course, this team's talented enough to win it all, but are they good enough to win it all? We saw that when the moment got the biggest, that's when this team crumbled on Saturday, and it's unfortunate because they played a hell of a game. I loved what Will Howard did throughout the majority of that game. I loved what the run game was kind of stopped at times, especially by Quinshon Judkins, but I love the game that Trevion Henderson had. But there's a lot going on in Columbus. I'm hearing a lot of rumblings of there being not altercations, but there's coaches bumping heads right now that, weren't really happy about how things transpired throughout that game over the weekend. I do not think this Buckeye team is a national championship contender. I think they're good enough to compete with Oregon to win the Big Ten. I think they're going to make the playoff, no doubt. But I'm not putting one single dime on Ohio State to win a national championship because people want to say one game and you're out. This isn't one game. The last time Ohio State won any game of substance, Clemson of 2020. It's almost a half decade ago. And you want me to sit back and say, well, they beat Clemson 5 years ago. OH, come on. It's Ohio State. There are standards, championship standards. And Ohio State and Ryan Day is not living up to that. They're not even winning Big Ten championships. And you're mad at me because I'm questioning whether they're good enough to win a national championship. I like Ryan Day. I respect when people say, well, who else are you going to get? I don't know. I'm not an AD. That's not for me to figure out. But I do know based on the standards at Ohio State, losing to Michigan for 3 straight years, losing big games to Oregon every time, losing to Georgia in the playoffs, losing to Alabama in the title game, you're not beating anyone of substance. And Ohio State has higher standards than that. That's why I do not believe, regardless of how talented this team is, I don't think they're a national championship contender. And until I see Ryan Day consistently beat a contender, I don't know if I can get on board. Guys, they haven't beat a contender in 5 years. To win a national title, you got to beat a contender 3 straight weeks. And you want me to believe that Ryan Day could do that when he hasn't beat a contender in 5 years and he's going to beat 3 contenders in consecutive weeks? I don't know, guys. I'm sorry. I am a Buckeye fan, but I don't think this is a contender with Ryan Day leading the way, unfortunately, as of right now.
In their last 6 losses, Ohio State, who obviously a lot of people focus on the wide receiver talent, but also claims to be a D-line U with some great edge rushers. In their last 6 losses, big-time losses, Ohio State has 4 combined sacks. That's a loss to Oregon over the weekend, Michigan 3 times, Georgia in the playoff, and then Oregon again in 2021. Ryan Day, 1-7 versus top 5 opponents. And Jim Knowles, in his 5 losses against top 5 opponents, has not forced one fourth-quarter punt. He's allowed 530 yards, 533 yards, 338 yards, and 496 yards. That's all to go along with 149 points in those 5 games. The Ohio State coaching staff as a whole has not been good. I don't think you can put it all on Ryan Day, but I also think he certainly does deserve a lot of the blame. I think it's a little bit crazy to say that they're not a national championship contender because I don't think the entire country is very good this year. I think the 12-team playoff is going to save us from what could have been a very ugly 4-team playoff because I don't necessarily think a lot of teams are very good. People are all out on Alabama because they lost to Vanderbilt. Well, they beat Georgia the week before. Does that mean Georgia's no good? Texas looks great so far this year. We haven't really seen them play that hard of a team unless you consider Michigan a really big test. We're going to see them play Georgia this week. We'll learn a lot about that program. Going into this game last week, people were out on Oregon. They thought they looked terrible the first 3 or 4 weeks. Ohio State goes in, loses by 1. Now everyone thinks Oregon is maybe the number 1 team in the country, and people are out on Ohio State. I think the entire country can compete for a national championship at this point. I think there's plenty of teams that can win it, and I think Ohio State isn't in the middle of that pack. They're towards the top of it. I think it comes down to quarterback play and head coaching, and Ohio State got outdueled at those 2 spots on Saturday. And I think a lot of that has to do with how Autzen Stadium's set up. It's incredibly loud. It's a very hard place to play, and it's the first time most of these players have played there. So it's a hard thing to do, and they went in and lost to a good team. I think that's going to happen a lot in college football. Before this season, I said that there's not going to be a single undefeated national championship in the 12-team era. I stand by that point. I don't think any team that goes undefeated through the gauntlets that are the Big Ten and the SEC with the new realignment is going to be able to go undefeated all the way to a national championship. That's 16 straight games beating competition. And it's not like the old 14 playoff with the old conferences where you can go through and not play a national championship contender until rivalry week. You're going to have to play good teams all season long, and we see that with Georgia in week 3, with Oregon in week 5. These games are earlier in the season and much more populated throughout the schedule. It's going to be harder to go undefeated. It's not going to happen. I'm more confident in this Ohio State team as a national championship contender after going to Oregon and playing a game like that. You have Quinshon Judkins, who runs for, I believe, 2 yards per carry, 2.5 yards per carry against Oregon. This is a guy we brought in to be a dominant running back. You have, Jeremiah Smith, and I say we can't argue about penalties, and I think that's absolutely right. Ohio State should have won that game long before an offensive pass interference. But Jeremiah Smith, a freshman who continues to put up insane numbers, 9 catches for 100 yards, and what would have been a catch at the end of the game on a beautiful route, in my opinion, to put them in field goal range, but he gets called back for offensive pass interference. 12-team playoff and the way the Big Ten's set up, Ohio State's going to get another shot at Oregon if they take care of business. I expect them to, and I expect them to take care of Oregon and Indianapolis. If they lose to Oregon again, we'll see what happens. But I'm still very, very high on this Ohio State team, and I think they could lose again, and I'll still be just as high on them.
Keep in mind real quick, it's not that I don't think – it's just based on I don't believe they could do it with Ryan Day because – everyone out there that thinks they can, what have you seen from Ryan Day-led teams?
So what coaches do you think can do it in college football?
I'm not the athletic director.
No, just all of college football. All of college football. What coaches do you think can do it?
I mean, Kirby Smart's one,
right,
but you're not getting him, obviously.
No, I'm not even saying for the Ohio State job.
Yep.
If Ryan Day can't win a national championship, what coaches can this season?
That's fair. That's fair.
Kirby Smart
because it's reset the field with a lot of the legendary coaches leaving.
Because I think Dabo's out. You don't believe in him to win a national championship anymore. Not you. I don't think people believe in him to win a national championship anymore.
And he has multiple. I think he's the only active coach with multiple.
Mac Brown.
Oh, he has multiple?
No, he just won the one in Texas.
Yeah,
you're right.
Either way.
You're right. But so if he can't, are you going to say Dan Lanning can, and it's just because he beat Ryan Day? Well, he lost to Washington last year in a winning in Pac-12 championship. So does he win big games? Then you say Kalen DeBoer can. Well, he lost to Vanderbilt. Can he win big games? I think Ryan Day has a chance to take a hold of his legacy right now with this system resetting and a lot of coaches leaving. And he had a chance to do it against Oregon, and he didn't take advantage. I think the season's still wide open, and if he can go all the way and win a championship, he's just fine. But if other coaches start to stack championships in this new Saban-less era, that's when I'm going to have a problem.
Fair enough. And here's the deal, too. Urban Meyer got blown out and lost at Purdue. Urban Meyer got shut out in a semifinal against Clemson 31-0. Urban Meyer lost to Iowa. Urban Meyer had bad losses. All right, because I know people keep bringing that up to me, too, that tough losses happen. And I talked about this. Keith Byers played at Ohio State, College Football Hall of Famer. He brought this up on our show over the weekend. Urban Meyer had tough losses, but he had the hardware and the history to show that, hey, yeah, and by the way, there's no perfect coach out there. Like Nick Saban, he didn't lose those types of games, don't get me wrong, but Nick Saban had the hardware that if he did stub his toe along the way, he was going to be given the benefit of the doubt. Urban Meyer got the benefit of the doubt because he had rings, he had national championships, and his list of big wins completely outweighed the list of bad losses. You're going to have bad losses. But Ryan Day's resume, it's all bad losses. Now, you could bring up the Rose Bowl a couple years ago, but to me, the Rose Bowl a couple years ago was just a complete reminder that, oh, yeah, we're in the Rose Bowl because we couldn't win the games that mattered. The Rose Bowl mattered, I guess. It was a consolation prize, but if you lived up to expectations, you're not playing in that Rose Bowl game. You beat Oregon, ironically enough, lost to Oregon that season. Can this team win a national championship? If they win it, and we want to replay this clip, and Kenner C, you don't know anything, fine. But it's October 15th. I don't even know what day it is. It's October 15th. And up until October 15th of 2024, Ryan Day has yet to prove that he can win against a contender. And until I see that, I'm just going to doubt. Are there other coaches that can come in and do a better job? I can't say that, to Jacob's credit with that question. But based on what I've seen, DeBoer, who has a tough loss against Vandy, DeBoer's won playoff games. DeBoer is coached in the national title game
same amount of playoff games
like Ryan Day. But again, we're talking about the recency thing too. Recency stuff matters. The recency bias stuff matters. Hell, that's what got DeBoer the job to begin with.
Yeah, true.
As far as that's concerned. But yeah, I'm not out on the Buckeyes and saying they have no chance. For me though, I'm not putting a dime on them to win a national championship from that perspective. And we'll see what ends up happening when it's all said and done. But man, oh man, like Penn State coming up in a few weeks, it's another big opportunity against a top team. Will I change my tune then? I'll say it's a good win. But again, the faces of the Big Ten in recent years, it's supposed to be Ohio State, Michigan, and now maybe Oregon's in that mix too. I'm not a big believer in Penn State to begin with, but don't lose to Penn State.
But will you count Penn State as a big win if they end 10-2?
I wouldn't put it against a contender. It's a big win. Do you consider Penn State a contender to win a title?
Yeah, and I consider Notre Dame's last year a big win as well.
It's a 3-loss team.
I know, but I still think going to a team like that and getting a win is a massive win in a game that came down to the wire. I count that as a big win as well. It's only 2 for Ryan Day, so it's not like it changes the argument at all. Yeah. But it's 1 versus 2.
We would have crushed him for the loss, to be fair.
Right, exactly.
So it's not, but like it's just kind of one of those. There's some of those things. You're Ohio State. You're expected to win those.
You're right. You're not wrong.
We do this in other sports all the time too. If you have a loaded roster, Ryan Day consistently has done less with more. To Harbaugh's credit, now last year's roster was loaded. But Harbaugh started doing a lot more with less than what Ryan Day has had in those final years at Michigan outside of last year. Last year's roster was stacked. And that's what a lot of people look at other coaches at and say, the coaches who are doing less with more. And that's how you win those Coach of the Years.
Yeah.
That's how you get those bigger jobs. Look at DeBoer at Washington. Man, if he could do that at Washington, what could he do with the resources at Alabama, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's how that stuff works. But nonetheless, Ohio State, a bye week. How sucky is that? You have that tough loss, and you got to go eat it in a bye week.
I'm happy about it. I think it's going to be a good thing for this team. I'm happy with the way the schedule lined up. I think they're going to bounce back off this bye week and just dominate Nebraska, but we'll see.
Colin Will says, when Ohio State wins the Natty, I can't wait for Ryan Day to scream into the camera, where is Justin Kinner at right now? That won't happen. Nobody knows who I am. Nobody knows who I am.
And just to prove your point a little bit more about Coach of the Years, you want to guess how many Coach of the Year, AP Coach of the Years Nick Saban won in his career? 7 national championships.
How many years did he coach?
He was at between LSU and Alabama. It was 2007 to 2023 at Alabama, and then 4 years at LSU with a championship there. And
I'm gonna
7
say I feel like you wouldn't be asking if it was a lot, so I'm gonna say 5.
5 is your low guess. Casey, how about you?
Is a low guess?
5. He said he wants to guess low because he thinks I'm asking because it's a low number, so he's guessing 5.
I'm gonna say 3.
3. Do you know or do you want to guess?
Oh, you said 3?
Yeah.
I'm going to say just 1.
2. Nick Saban won
Crazy.
2 AP Coach
That's
of the
crazy.
Year. Only 1 at Alabama, and it wasn't in a national championship year. He won it
Oh,
in
my
2008,
goodness.
his second year at the school.
That's insane.
Urban Meyer Coach of the Year, I think he won 1 in the Big Ten, right?
Yeah, I believe
think it
so.
was- and it's because a lot of those coaches, when you're dominant, well, you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that's the standard at Alabama. That's
We
the
talk about
standard
it with
at Ohio
LeBron
State.
MVPs a lot.
Yeah.
If it actually went to the most valuable player in the league, he'd have 15 of them.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
he doesn't.
That's why you get Big Ten Coach of the Year. It's probably going to be Indiana's coach.
Absolutely.
It's probably going to be. It's not Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning's done a fantastic job, and that's scheduled for them, by the way. If they're not undefeated heading into the Big Ten title game, that'll be kind of wild. I could see them stubbing their toe against Michigan because why not?
Oh,
right?
how about a week? How about this week?
Who do they got this week?
Welcome to the Big Ten, Oregon. Take your number 2 rating into West Lafayette and play Purdue, baby.
Ooh, is this their Vandy game?
Most wins against number 2 in the history of college football, the Purdue Boilermakers. Welcome
right?
to the Big Ten, baby.
It's their Vanderbilt game. There you go.